Welcome to Boulder Insights October Tableau Live session. I'm Heather Datillo, and I will be one of your co-hosts today. I'm also joined by my esteemed colleagues and friends, Sarah Heinrichsen and Christy Clark. And we're super excited to have you joining us today. So I know, Jordan, you were going to put a question in for folks. We're so excited that you found us. I know we've asked that in the registration. And some of you are regular faces that we see often or that are our clients that we know well, and some are new faces. So we're thrilled to have you all with us. So for the way that this works each month, we have a typical agenda that we follow. We start with a welcome, which we're doing right now, and then we move into submitted questions. And from there, we will also look for any questions from people who are here with us live joining. If you have questions, you can put that right into the chat. So first question that Jordan has for you is how many people use Tableau at your organization? So it could be creators or otherwise, just how many people are using Tableau at your organization? Some of you may say, I'm it. I am, it's just me, and I have several explorers or viewers, but I'm the one doing all the creating. Others might have a larger footprint at your organization. So just let us know. We're always curious to see. So today, with submitted questions, we have questions around changing data sources. We have questions around formulas, connecting sheets together. We'll talk more to get understanding of what that might be specifically, because we have a few ideas for that. How to do maps that are integrated with Esri files, talking a little bit more about Tableau Cloud and site administration, MuleSoft integrations. A question came in about that. And then we had a question from last month that we didn't get to answer because we had so many questions in the last session about creating and uploading graphics to Tableau. So we'll get into that. Again, we always have an open Q&A, and then we'll do a wrap up as well to make sure that there's other ways that we can support you. So let me turn on my video. I realized that was not on. Okay, so Lisa G, let's see, Lisa is here. That's great. We're glad to have you here, Lisa. And we know you put in a question about changing data sources. So if you'd like, you're welcome to come off mute and give any more specifics around that. If not, we can go on with what we're thinking and how we'd go about answering that for you. But if you have any more explanation that you'd like to provide, feel free to come off mute.
Okay, the issue I was having is I was connecting to a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet, and re trying to rename the sheet. It caused an error and it wouldn't connect. So I don't know if that was just the particular workbook I was on or if there's some way to avoid that.
Yeah, awesome. That is a great question and something that happens a lot. So let me go ahead and share my screen, and I'm actually going to do this as an example of Excel. So let me share the screen real quick and we can take a
Yep,
look.
I'm trying to get my thing to pull back up to let me stop sharing.
Oh,
So,
no, I've got it. You
you
should
got
be
it.
able
Okay,
to see
great.
it now.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think
There
you're
we
great.
go.
Okay.
Awesome. Awesome.
So as of right now, and I'm going to show this just a little bit deeper than that, Lisa. But feel free to take yourself off of mute as well. When you renamed the sheet, did you come in here and everything was bright red with a bunch of exclamation points on it? Like it was screaming at you?
Yes, that was one of the issues.
Yeah. So what happens is the data connection itself. So right now I'm connected to one sheet in Tableau in Excel. And if I click on the data source tab at the bottom to go take a look, you'll see that it includes the worksheet name as part of it. So if I rename this worksheet in the underlying data, Tableau's still looking for the old name. It doesn't understand a rename. It only understands that the word orders isn't there anymore. And so those red exclamation points are your warning. In that case, the easiest fix is just to click right here and choose to edit the connection. Or you can simply refresh by clicking right up here at the top. And so if I had a second orders database sheet in here, I would just drag out the old one and then drag in the new one. And you get these error messages saying, hey, you broke things, but that is one of the ways that we can do this. Okay. Now, I'm going to take it a little bit further in a slightly different direction because another way to do this can sometimes be a little bit smoother because we don't get some of those sorting issues because things switch over a little bit more quickly. So first up, Lisa, did that give you a little bit of extra information over where you were before, or are you like, yeah, I tried that and it didn't work?
Um, I tried several things, and this was a while back, so um, I still had trouble with it. So yeah.
Gotcha. Well, here's another thing that I find can work really well is Tableau allows us to replace data sources. So let's say in this case, I'd already built out my workbook. And in this case, I've got 3 tabs across the bottom, but only this one tab should actually go to a different data set, that new worksheet that I have. Well, instead of going back and editing my existing data source, another thing we can try is to open a new one. So if I click on my little cylinder up here at the top and say, yep, I still want it to be Microsoft Excel, that's no problem. We can then go in and find the data that we need. So instead of global, I want sample superstore now, and we click to open it. Now, we've got the same structure in this other workbook because it's pretty much the same data. It's just been updated slightly. But when I bring in that orders table, if I come and take a look at the data, I just want you to notice one thing. Notice that over here in my columns, I've got things like region, but when I take a look at my superstore table, it was using category, subcategory, and market. Okay. So if I try with my sample superstore to build that same thing, I'll realize pretty quickly that, okay, when I'm in my sample superstore data, and notice right here, I can just switch in between those data sources. I've got category. That seems to match. I've got subcategory. That seems to match as well, but I have no market. In this data, I actually have this region field and central, east, south, and west. Well, that's our new structure. That's how our markets are set up now. So my data between the two worksheets doesn't line up perfectly. Okay. So what I want to do is update this worksheet and all the calculations that go with it so that it works fine, but I leave my others as they are. So what I do is I start off on the worksheet that I need the new data for. And we'll see the little blue check mark telling us what data set we're connected to. And all I do is I can right click on it and I tell Tableau, hey, let's replace this data source. Now, in this particular case, I don't want to do it for the whole workbook. I only want to do it on this worksheet. So I check this little box and I say, all right, let's make that change. Let's update that data source. So when I click OK, Tableau goes through and it does the update. But there's that red screaming I was mentioning because I was using this market field and I didn't have it in my new data set. Well, if I'd used market, any of the fields, if I use them in other calculations, it's going to update all my calculations with the new fields. It's going to go through and do everything, but it's broken on market. And I apologize. My dog is choking in the background. So if you hear weird sounds, that's not me. So for this red exclamation point, this one little mismatch, I can simply right click. And when I choose to replace references, just like replacing the data source, it's going to go through and let me take that region field, which is the new field for this data. And when I choose OK, it's going to update every worksheet, every calculation that used that market field originally to now use region. So now I'm on my second data source and the other one stays as is. So rather than editing connection, that replace data source can be a nice way for you to go through and update everything one by one. Just make sure that you're updating the underlying fields first and then your calculations, because that'll save you a lot of work since so many of the calculations will update automatically. Does that help a bit, Lisa?
Yeah, I'll keep it in mind for the future. Thank you.
No worries.
All right. Thanks, Christy. Do you need to go check on your puppers and make sure it's okay?
Oh no, she's standing right behind me and
Okay,
her
great.
noises.
We didn't hear any, but I just wanted to make sure choking puppy was first taken care of. All right. Well, let me go ahead. I'll share my screen here. And we'll go on to the next question. Come on, computer. There we go. And I know this one was from Masumi, and Masumi is on the call. And so I know you had some questions around formulas. Do you have any specific question around formulas? We have some things planned that we can talk about, but want to give you an opportunity if you want to come off mute to share more.
Yes, ma'am. Hello?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
We sure
Hi.
can.
Okay, so yeah, so what I'm having is I have certain requests that come in. And so what we're needing is anything that's maybe 25 days over the request date to be highlighted in a color. And then everything over 50 days to be highlighted in a separate color, and then maybe 100 days in another color.
Gotcha.
How do I go about doing that in a data set?
Okay. Sarah, I think this was a question you were going to take, if I'm not
Yes, it
mistaken.
yes, it sure was.
Okay.
Um, I would be happy to take that. Let me do the thing with the sharing and the things. Okay. Um, Found it. Oh my gosh. Okay. Um, so a couple things when it comes to calculations. We put a few resources in the slide deck, and you guys will get access to that slide deck, so you'll get access to those resources as well. One of the things that I like to remind people is there are hundreds of functions, and many times though people think, oh my gosh, I have to know all of them, I have to memorize all of them, I have to do all of these things. And I would just like to assure you, I have been using Tableau for about 10 years and I do not know what all of the functions do. There's lots of great resources out there. There's also lots of great blog posts and other partners of Tableau that have many times figured out exactly what you're looking to do. So, um, a very I'm going to pull up a very simple, I know this seems a little like duh, but looking at what functions are out there and what resources are out there is really great to just start that process. Once you have a little bit more of the vocabulary, you can actually, for example, in our case, say date formulas in Tableau, and you can get just those date functions. You can also see um, what are the date functions and what your options are, right? I also like this all functions because it goes through, shows everything. We can look at our date functions. It shows what the function is, the syntax, an example, and some notes. So there's tons of resources out here. We've also linked a couple of videos that for just kind of generic string manipulation and logic calculation. So there's many others out there as well. To kind of focus on what we were talking about, what Masubi was talking about, is finding the difference between dates. Now, I only have one date in this data set, but let me go to another data set that has more dates. So I'm using our sample superstore that's within Tableau. And within this data set, we have ship date and order date. So we can look at those. There's all sorts of date hierarchies that Tableau just inherently puts into or defaults these values to. I'm just going to do a little bit of fancy footwork just so that we can look at the actual dates. So we have our ship date and we have our order date. And with this data set, we could look at something like, what is, oh, and I have these backwards. Let's fix that. When somebody orders, how long does it take to ship out? Right? What are those days? And we could even categorize them using logic statements into those different buckets, like you were talking about. So the first step here is to create a calculated field. So I'm going to go to the left side, click the down arrow, click calculated field, and we're going to call this our difference in days. And Tableau has, I always love this side, I always call it your best friend that you didn't know was at the party. So this is your best friend you didn't know was at the party so that you have somebody to talk to so that you're not all by yourself. And this is very similar to that previous one that I was talking about, where you can go in and use the drop down and say, okay, I want to look at all the different date functions. In this case, we're going to look at date diff. So date diff returns the difference between two dates. So I can just start typing. I can use my arrows and my tabs to fill out these values. So my start date is my order date, and then my ship date. And I can find the days, the difference in days between these two dates. So I'm going to click OK. And then I'm going to pull that data out here, that new field out here onto text. And what you'll notice is that in some cases, like if we look at the second row here, we have our January 4th to January 8th. And, I'm not a math major, but 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, that's 4, not 12, right? So we also have to be really mindful about what calculation we're using, what function we're using, and then also the aggregation of that function within our view. Now, if we looked at this at the order level, if I brought order out here, we can see, oh, this is still not the lowest level of detail. So order, and then probably just like how you guys go to Amazon, you make one order, you might have multiple items within that order. So we might have to go all the way down to product name. And what you'll notice is that here we have 3 rows, each with 4 days for each of our products. So we're getting that 12 number. So what you can do is actually use that difference in days to bucket our different products into like date ranges. So I could take, again, create a calculated field, and I could say date, call it date KPI. So if our difference in days is greater than or equal to 10, then real bad. And I see that there's some chats, so let me make sure that I am monitoring. Ooh, yeah, that's a great question. So I was monitoring the chat. It says, how difficult would it be to count date differences for only weekdays? So if you were saying like from Monday to Monday is only 5 business days, or Friday to Monday is just 1 day because we're not open on Saturday and Sunday. Am I getting that right, Alexi? Yeah, perfect. It's not super hard. What you can do, it just requires a little bit of finessing. So what you can do is you can actually, and let me finish this up, and then I will come to that question. But you can do it within Tableau. And then let's say else if difference in days. Ooh, typing is hard, everybody. Difference in days is less than, oops, sorry. Let's do greater than or equal to 5, then okay. And then if it's let's see, greater than or equal to 1. Oh, kind of forgetting stuff here. Then good. Else great. End. Right. So you can define what those buckets are as you define your KPIs. And let's hope that I wrote this correctly, which I maybe did not. But then we could use something like that on color to determine our greats versus okays versus real bads. Yeah, see, my buckets weren't totally correct in there. I think I missed 5 through 10. So It's really important to always test your calculations before you kind of put them out there and write them. But
I think they're
this
just in
is,
alphabetical order on color too. I think that might be what's
oh, well,
happening.
no, it's my grades are on 4. I just
Oh,
missed
got you.
5 through
Got you.
10.
Got you.
Yeah, because I did greater than 10 and then less than 5. And so it didn't know where to put those middle ones. Um, but this is how we can bucket those values, um, and then use kind of like a highlight table to, or even some shapes to say, like, this is up, this is down, this is good, this is bad. We can then go in and define those shapes as we, or use shape and color to say which of our products fall into those different categories. Now, does that answer the first question?
Yes, yes, it does.
Okay, great. Awesome. And then Alexi's question of how difficult would it be to count the difference in days for only weekdays? Um, we can do that within our date diff calculation. Um, we can pull out one of the other date functions that we have is something called, we could either use date name, we can use, I think I usually use date name and not date part, just because it's a little easier to say the days of the week. So we could write a calculation that says, if date name equals Saturday or if date name equals Sunday, then like skip over it. So we could add additional logic to this date diff and say, you know, if the order date is Friday and the ship date is Monday, we can go through and do that within this calculation using that date name function that I was talking about, and use logic to say whether certain days are included in the date diff function.
And Sarah, isn't there a function that's also weekday? Can we put that in instead of day for the date part?
We have
In
if we were here, is that what you're talking about?
yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so you can, but that gives you the number of weeks between
Got
these
you.
two
Okay.
dates, not the number of days. Yeah. So, but you could also use that as your logic, right? So instead of using date name and saying, okay, Saturday and Sunday, you could say, is my date diff between these two more than a week? Then if it's more than, 1, or if it's not 0, then I'm going to do slightly different logic, right? Or I'm going to subtract 2 days from the output. So you can do there's multiple ways to get there. Um, and you could do it through a date diff with then another, using a date diff as a logic statement and then using another date diff, or you could use your date name to say and exclude certain days of the week. It's a better way to say that. Okay, like I said, we have quite a few resources on the slide deck of more ways to use formulas and calculations in Tableau. If we want, maybe next time, if people still have questions about formulas, or if you have specific questions about string manipulation type formulas, we can add that to the list for next time. I know we have quite a bit more to cover, so I want to make sure that I'm keeping this to the questions that were asked. I could talk about formulas and calculations for days. So um,
Yeah.
we
So many
have
options.
so many options. Absolutely. All right, I'll
All
pass it back
right.
to you, Heather.
Thank you. Um, awesome. So I'm moving around some things in the presentation to make sure that we get the people who are here live with us. I don't know why this happened to me last time, so let me move this one over instead. And so what I want to do is move to Denise's question. And she was asking a question about Tableau Cloud and site management. So we have admin versus cloud site admin resources on our slide deck for you all, in addition to permissions. But Deneen, I know you're on the call. Is there anything particularly that you wanted to make sure we cover?
Well, you know what? I was just looking specifically, and thank you for getting to my question. I was just looking specifically for some do's and don'ts or of how to manage different sites. In particular, just kind of give you our use case. Initially, it was just one group of us that were using it, one division, I will say.
Right.
And I was asked, hey, well, what if we get rid of one of our other groups and merge everyone together, and all we have to manage from a procurement perspective is one Tableau license. I not shouldn't say license, but just manage Tableau in one group, but everyone still has access to it, meaning we would probably have to bump up our licenses, but we still have management of it from a procurement perspective in one division. So
Gotcha.
in doing so, I want to make sure that I'm able to separate the projects from the different divisions, separate visibility to certain things, separate users, and again, but still managing all of the licenses. I
It's a great
created
question,
a
Deneen.
site, but I just want to make sure I've done it in the correct way, and that, again, if there are any hints or tricks to maintain that you may have or want to pass along, that would be great.
That's great. And thank you for the context to that. Christy or Sarah, who's taken this question?
Oh, I got this one. I'm so
Okay. And I have some insights I might throw in from time to time. So love it.
awesome. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And thank you so much for asking this. You're touching on one of my favorite topics. Just for everyone's just kind of clarification, there's a difference in Tableau between a site and a project. So when you have a site, that's where when you go to log in, and before you can get all the way in, it's like, which site do you want to come to? And it's this big drop down over here on the left. Okay. So I'm currently logged into Tableau. And once you get to this screen, you are in a site unless you're the server admin. Okay. Now, the reason that's important, the largest Tableau implementation I ever worked on had one site because their permissions were so specific and they needed so many different people to manage them that what they did is they treated projects like sites.
Hmm.
And let me tell you a little bit about why. If I have more than one site here, all of that information is 110% completely and totally walled off. If I ever decide I want to merge or change how people see things, I've got to permission them to different sites and then go through and migrate the content over, as in republish my data sources, republish my dashboards, republish everything so that the people on that site have access to the same stuff as people on another. And this particular organization was large and complex enough that, you'd have three people who needed access to three sites, one who needed half the stuff. You get the picture. It's probably what you're dealing with right now.
Yes.
Yeah. So the alternative, and this is something that's used here at Boulder Insight as well, is if we come down to this project level here at Explore, these top level projects, this particular organization treated each one of these projects like its own site. So each different group could have the site set up. And what it comes down to is how you set your permissions. So number one, if I go into this little folder right here and click on it, the permissions in Tableau are insanely complicated. But there's a couple key things to remember. First, when I click on my dots up here and I go into permissions, the first thing you'll notice here is that there's an all users group. So groups are something that your site admins can set up over here on the left. And you can even integrate this with things like Active Directory. So you can build groups in your Active Directory and have those come over to Tableau and manage the users underneath. So that's the first big tip, is manage your permissions through groups, not individuals. And here's why. If I build a group and add the group here, so by clicking add, I can add individual people or I can add individual groups. When I add individual groups, all of the members of that group will get the same permissions. Okay. And then if I add and remove people from those groups, that cascades all the way down and adds and removes them from different dashboards. So if I start off with this group having 10 members and access to 4 dashboards, but we change out 2 of those members, I update my group and all of the permissions cascade. If you give permissions directly to individual users, they're not going to cascade the same way. If I change my permission here at the project level, I have to go back workbook by workbook and remove them from those workbooks also. So we want to be really careful about how we do that. So I would recommend using groups, not individuals, when you're granting permissions.
Mhm.
Second big tip is you'll notice that the permissions up here are customizable. What that means is if I have someone publishing up to these folders, well, that person can decide who gets to see things. So if I've got Bob who's used to publishing for 15 different groups of people and he whoops accidentally fat fingers on publish and includes all of those groups, I've just given access to all those people to that dashboard when I don't want them to see that.
Right.
But if instead we edit, we can lock these permissions so only the server admin has the ability to control who can see each folder. So if you treat top level projects like sites and grant at that top level the access, then you can go down from there and subdivide within that one individual group who has access at different levels. So let's say in this particular project, I have one group that I want them to be able to do everything. Well, I can add them here to give them access. And then I have another group who maybe can only view. Well, I give them viewer access. So you decide what project to publish in based on who should see it.
Mhm.
Last tip, publish your data sources separately. If your data sources are published separately, you can permission and secure those separately. So only your data analysts can go in and grab the data. If you manage those in the same folder, note that your permissions all the way across here have to be set and applied for every single one of these. But if we keep those data sources in separate projects, then we can set it and forget it. And then we don't ever have to worry about Bob being given access to a workbook, but whoops, now he's connecting to the underlying data and seeing things that he shouldn't.
Mhm. And no issues with refreshing the data?
None. When you embed the data in the workbook, it all
Mhm.
comes up together. But this is why it's so great to have a site. These project folders can see across each other. So if I realize this was in the wrong workbook, I can say, hey, let's move it somewhere else. And no problem. With a site, I'd have to download and republish. If I have a data source in a different project, no problem. As long as the person who should have access to that data has access, when they publish it up, they permission the dashboards to use the data. So they're not
Mhm.
sharing
Mm.
the underlying data, they're just saying this dashboard can access it. And so the end users can access what I've allowed them to see. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. This is a great setup.
So, well, good. It gets complicated. That's probably the 5-minute overview to get you started, but those resources are good and dense. So there's a lot of other details to it. One blogger I would recommend you looking out for is Mark Wu. Mark Wu is a Tableau visionary, and he is one of the few that's done that only from being a server administrator. So he has a whole blog series on security and permissioning that while it is dense, it details a very strong server setup.
Okay. Okay. Great. So the capabilities to create, although it exists to create separate sites, it's not necessarily the way to go.
Separate sites, whenever it comes to security, I'm always hesitant to say absolutely, not necessarily
Mhm.
the way to go.
Mhm.
Because I mean, if you're dealing with like, I want to keep my data from the IRS separate from my housing data, well, in those cases, we might want to do separate sites because there shall be no crossover. But if we're talking about where we've got different departs merging and shifting and moving, then you can achieve a similar level of security using folder permissions as you can using separate sites.
Got it.
So I'm never going
Perfect.
to say do it this way from security because, oh, I do not want to make those choices. But yes, you can mimic the functionality of site differences as well.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. And we love when you all come off mute. So thank you, everybody, for adding some context to the questions that you submitted. That is so helpful. So the next person that I know that is in here that had a question too was Alexi. So let me actually get to my screen share again here. And we'll look at Alexi's question. My computer's a little slower than normal today. So looking at maps integrated with Esri files. So we do, again, this link for the whole PowerPoint for the Canva presentation has been shared with you all in the chat. So you'll be able to see that information. I also am noticing in the chat that Sarah fixed her calculation for good and great and real bad, all of those. That's all fixed in there for anybody that needs it. So Alexi, do you want to add anything as to what your use case is with the integrating maps with Esri files? Or would you like us just to go ahead and show how to do that?
No, I could try to add a little bit of context. We use data from an application that is geographically based. So we have different projects at different sites. And so I'm just looking for an end user, for example, that might have a tablet or whatever to be able to see, or an executive back in the office to be able to see where things are happening graphically on a map. I'm a
Fantastic.
big fan of the map as a UI kind of thing. So kind of coming from that
People
perspective.
do love maps. We will tell you that for sure. And this is Christy. So Christy's going to go ahead and take this one. My always, suggestion with maps is don't try to make them do too much. They're great for showing location. Don't try to make them do more than that. So, but I'll let Christy take it from here.
And that's one of my big things too. How do we get it to show what we need without all this other random stuff? So I'm going to be doing this based on regular Tableau data, but I did just want to point out that if we go back to that data connection screen, when we come to a file area, there's a spatial file area. So from here, you are able to sit on top of a number of different types of data, including Esri. So you can grab that data. The same principles apply that I'm going to look at here. Now, there is one big difference, but whenever we bring data in that Tableau recognizes as geographic, it gets this little globe next to it. And that's some of the automagical Tableau features. When we get that globe, we also get these italicized fields for latitude and longitude. Italicized means Tableau created it. That is not in my data. So when you sit on top of a shape file, you might not get country, state, and city coming in. What you'll get instead is a globe that says collect. And you'll do the same thing with that globe because that's Tableau recognizing that the data is Latin long. And all you do to build a map is you take whichever level of detail you want. So in my case, I want to build a state level map. And I just drag that field to detail on my marks card. And what Tableau auto magically does is bring you longitude and latitude up to the top. Now I'm going to simplify this a little further. Notice that because my data is in a hierarchy, because we've said, hey, country comes above state, when I bring state in, it brings country also. Now the reason is if I get rid of country, sometimes in this case, it just assumes United States. Sometimes we have things that are duplicated, like Springfield exists in about 40 different states. So if I just mapped Springfield, Tableau would have no idea how far to drive. But yeah, we just bring in the fields with the globe. Now I'm going to keep it here for just a second to talk about a couple of things. As Heather mentioned, it can be very nice to have a map for end users, but making sure that they can see what they need to see can be a little difficult. So for example, and actually I will switch this back to country, hold please. When we're at this country level, maybe I want to understand what my profit or my sales look like. So I can place sales up here on color. Now again, Tableau automatically is switching our map so that we've got a filled map and I can see how big or small those changes are. The problem is Tableau is really big on pre-attentive attributes, those things we've processed faster than the speed of thought, because our visual system is so important. The challenge, though, is when my colors are far apart from each other, it's hard for me to tell how much more or less intense they are. So with the map, we're not getting quite the same feel for exactly what's higher or lower. So I do want to keep that in mind. We can make some adjustments by saying, hey, you know what? Instead of putting sales on color, let's put that on size. And Tableau gives us a filled map, or we can, a bubble map, excuse me, or I can do both. So we can play with it quite a bit. But the big thing I want you to notice here is how much those dots disappear into the background. So when we're building maps with a lot of detail, note that in our color area, we can go back in and add things like little borders. So we can say, hey, let's help those pop a little bit more. But again, we're still losing some of that color. Now, I, like Sarah, I have the advantage of having used Tableau for about a decade now. And back in the day, there were things that were considered super cool that have been superseded by even super cooler things. So some of those older pieces get lost. Let me show you that we have a map menu up at the top. By default, we get all that colorful stuff in the background, but we also have the option to adjust different background layers. So once our map is built, when we open those background layers, we can adjust the style. Like we've got light, we could say, hey, let's make it a national park map. That's so much easier to read. Or we can leave that at our light level. But you have all these other things that you can add in. And Alexi, just because I know a bit of the data that you're looking at, I want to point out that it goes all the way down to building footprints. So 9 times out of 10, I recommend subtracting things because the less that we have in our view, the less background stuff we have going on, the easier it is for us to read the data. So we could maybe remove land cover, and that makes it a little bit cleaner and a little bit easier to see. On the other hand, if we wanted to, say, track how we're doing at different sites and locations, we might want to add in our building footprints and maybe get rid of some of these other items, like all of our borders and items, and just put in our buildings and our streets. Now, right up here, we can't see much of anything, but if we zoom in on this map, and I'm just using the zoom controls from up here, so let me move this on over. Let's zoom into a completely randomly selected location, say Houston. But as we zoom in deeper and deeper, we see that some of those items pop. And so now we can see even some of these building footprints and start to get a better idea. So if pieces of information like this are useful to you to see exactly when and where, add them in. But if your data has absolutely nothing to do with where buildings are or where streets and roads are, leave those pieces out. They just detract from the data. Now I'm going to pull this all the way back up to the highest level by clicking on my little pin here on my map to zoom back on out. And the last little item I want to point out is that same information is sometimes easier to see. Oops, let's get these same things on as a bar chart. Woo, let's actually do that right. So one thing that I really do recommend if you want to use a map is use it in conjunction with a bar chart, because with something like this, you have two advantages. One is we can truly see the magnitude of different distance. The other is if I use something like the bar chart as my filter, even if it's not the same level, maybe, and in fact, let me go do this. Oh, must bounce back and forth. It can't be helped. If I do my map all the way down to the state level, that gets kind of hard to see. But if I come over to my map dashboard and say, hey, let's zoom in on Germany, my filters let my dashboard on my map automatically update to go to that level. So even though at the high level, this is kind of hard to read, I can zoom in and get more detail as I need to. Now, I know that was a pretty quick overview. The presentation shares some of my favorite resources around maps as well. But Alexi, did that start to give you kind of what you're looking for?
Oh yeah, that was awesome. Thank you.
No worries.
And Christy, will you do me a favor? Will you click on the Tableau Sparkle for a second in the top left? And just to show spatial files. So if you all have to connect to an Esri file, you'll see that that's how you would get to that spatial file to connect to that as well. So just always helpful to see. If you just have normal data with zip code and not an SRE file, it will automatically have those geographic roles and your dimensions. Again, that SRE file, like Christy talked about at the beginning, that will show up with the globe in measures, and it will say collect. So,
Can I ask a quick question? So
yeah.
does that mean, for example, we're a public transportation agency and we might have bus routes. If we have a layer from Esri for bus routes, could that come in as one of those?
Yes.
Okay,
I worked with a railroad company that did exactly that.
sweet. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Pretty awesome. Well, I'm seeing that we've answered all the questions of people who are live here. Just want to make sure before I continue to move through, is there any question that anyone would like to come off mute or put into the chat from our group today? If not, we'll keep on continuing with what's been submitted. Okay, and we always want to give our live attendees that attention that you all deserve. So let me go ahead. I'll share my screen again. So the next one, with the time we have left, I think we can go ahead and talk a little bit about Nan's question that had come in around Tableau Cloud. And Jordan, was there a specific question beyond just Tableau Cloud, advantages of it, or any more
No,
specifics?
just I think Tableau Cloud is a topic, submitted
Okay.
topic.
All right. Well, we do have a link, as always, in the chat. We have shared this presentation. I don't know, Christy or Sarah, who's taken this question.
I'm always willing to talk first. It's painful. I think I shared what I have. Maybe bridge discussion, might Sarah, would you?
Sure. I think we were going to kind of just wrap this in with the Tableau Cloud kind of site management and all of that.
That makes
We,
sense.
yeah, I think we can keep going if we want to
Okay.
talk a little bit more about maybe creating upload graphics, or if we wanted to
Yeah,
talk
well,
about
that sounds
MuleSoft
great.
integrations. Yeah.
So yeah, let me talk about this one. And this will be me. This was a question that came in from Amanda last month that we didn't get to. So it's nice that we get to it this month, at least, Amanda. So let me start by presenting this a little larger. So as far as uploading graphics to Tableau, we don't recommend that you upload a bar chart or something else that, a donut chart, anything that you've created in another tool. But we do recommend that you can put background images and things in there. And so this is a funny one that's in our Boulder Insight Academy class. Kevin was one of our former employees, and he was our director of UI UX here at the company. And he had a miller moth infestation at his mountain house here in Colorado. And so he was doing his own experiment of trying to determine which methodology of weapons would work best to kill these miller moths. And so I'll show this actual dashboard to you a little bit and how that works and how you can put in background images. But what I want to show you first are some of these great resources that you can go to. So one of our favorite resources is for background images. These are all free. It's called unsplash.com. So let me go to that first. And I believe by the magic of earlier prep, I have pulled these up. Let me grab that if I can from here. I may have shut it. Let me go ahead and open it up again. There we go. So Unsplash is a great resource. It's free resources for background images. So I once worked with an aerospace company, and so we found some rockets and things. So I went ahead and put in Miller Moth in my search, so you can just type for that. But not every background is good for a dashboard. So as we start to scroll through, you can see I'm not really great with graphic design and things. So I want to find one that's pretty much laid out the way that I want my dashboard. And so the best one in this one, as I'm scrolling through, would be this image here. And the reason that that's better is that you'll notice that the image is here over to the far right, and there's lots of room where I could start to put in some of the data. You want the image to look beautiful, but you want the data to shine. So one of the things that's really great is that when you take this, then what you can do is put this into the background of your dashboard. and then you can layer your items on top. So let me bring over, here is the finished dashboard, and I'll bring over the starter workbook. So in order to put a background image in, you have to actually have each of your worksheets that you've brought in, they actually need to be floating. So you'll have to convert those to floating. So I can do that and start to change each of these to floating, which is what I have in the final one. And what you do then, and you'll notice we added some shaded boxes. So if you have any graphic designers on your team, you can give them, say, can you make me a background image for the dashboard? Some of the things to keep in mind when you're using images, we tend to keep it as a PowerPoint size, 1600 by 900, but depending on what you're doing with yours, if you need this to be something that people will be printing out, then you may want to do a different layout for that. That would be legal landscape or letter portrait or something, depending on. We tend to stick with that 600 by 1900. So all of these are actually floating objects. So you'll notice that this is a floating image. This is now a floating one as well. So you can see that they're floating, and I can grab the handle and move them around. That's what we mean by floating. So in order to change the background image, I want to get this or add a background image in. I essentially click on the far right or get that handle right at the top here. And once I have that, you'll notice I get this option to edit image. So from here is where you can choose the image that you have on your computer. You'll notice these are some background images I was using for one of our most recent projects called the Colorado Health Foundation Pulse Poll. So I'll give you the link to that so you can see. But you can easily just choose your image. This one is the BG background moths image. You choose that, and then you would size it. So if I look at the layout of this, let me click OK, close that out. Okay, here we go. Now we got it. If we look at the layout, your X and Y will be 0 and 0, and your width is 1600. So if I start to change this, you'll notice that this isn't totally aligned. If I would even change this to say 1000, here, you'll notice that it's not fully aligned with the layout, that there's some white space there and things. So you want to make that 1600 by 900. Let me get that handle on here again. Get that back up to 1600. Then that will lay out perfectly. Then you have your images, and it's just a matter of dragging and dropping. But again, in order for that background image to be showing, you then are using floating objects to put on top. So that's one way to get to background images. Another thing to keep in mind, let me get back to our slide. We also talk about sometimes people want to put in icons into things. So Sarah talked about shapes when she was looking at the date parts and doing the date formulas. This is a great place to go to icons, and you can then add these shapes as well. So let's say we want to look for arrows, for instance. You can go ahead and start to search for those, and you can get all kinds of different images that these are free as well, that you can download and then put into a shape file. And then in order to use those in your workbooks, and let me pull this over, you would go to your Tableau repository, and there's a shapes file there. So you can add all of your different shapes. You'll notice I have ones for bug tracking that are in there and things. So you can add all kinds of shapes, and then those can be made available if it's in your documents, My Tableau repository and shapes. Those will then be available for your workbooks. So another cool place to go for graphics. And then the final thing that we want to offer to you all too, this is something that normally you have to, that's free, but you have to log in. But because you all have already registered, this link, and I'll put this into the chat specifically for you. One of the things that we often do is we create background images that have UI UX best practices based on human-centered design theories that have layout containers in our templates where you simply drag and drop. We've already put in a background image for you. You can download these, and they have 20 different layouts for you with KPIs, left navigation, and things in the center as well. So those layout containers mean you're just dragging and dropping into the container, and everything is pixel perfect. The other option that you'll notice is we have skins. Skins are just what I just did. It's a background image. These, again, are based on UI UX best practices, but you have 80 different background images. These are all free for you to download. It's just a Twibix file. You can share it with your whole company. And so what you can do is you have those background images, they're a layout image, that you're going to have there, and everything would need to be floating that you would do with the skins. It's just a background image with shaded containers and things that you can use. So 80 in the skins, 20 here, and we can also make these custom for your whole company for very affordable time that you just do it a one time that we do it for you, and then it's available to your whole company. So lots of ways to add graphics and images to things. I'm happy to walk through any of the things further. I know Amanda was the one that asked the question. She's not here, but anybody on the call, do you have any questions about the items that we shared? All right. If
I
not,
do, I do, I
oh
do.
yes,
Just getting
go
to
ahead,
those
Denise. It's hard to find that mute button, huh?
It
Go
is,
for it.
it is. Getting to the Tableau templates. Just clarify, do I need a login ID? Do I need to
You
create a
don't.
login ID?
Nope, we've got your information from registering. So you just go to the link that we put in the chat here, and that's in the power in the presentation as well, and that will get you access to all of those
Wonderful.
options.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
You're so welcome. All right, guys, we are almost at time. So that means next session we can get into server and cloud security deep dives, as well as MuleSoft integrations, and talk a little bit further about that. In addition to any more questions around Tableau Cloud that you might have, it is where lots of the AI features are happening in Tableau right now. If you have Tableau on-prem, Tableau server that's on-prem, you don't have a lot of the AI options. So that's one of the great things about Tableau Cloud right now. And if you are considering migrating from server to cloud, we can absolutely help you with that as well. So keep in mind, we want to help you anytime. We're here every month, so you can come back next month. But if you also want a strategy or a dashboard makeover session, feel free to click on my link and get some time with me, and we'll talk through how we can best support you all. And we hope that you all will join us next month. So tell us how we did. If there's things that you wish that we'd cover and we didn't get a chance to today, let us know that. And also sign up for November. We tend to be here at the same time, same place every time. We're usually here at this third Wednesday of the month, or second. I don't know what it is. Where am I? And what time it is. So please come join us. We'd love to have you. Thanks so much for being here, and have a wonderful October, everyone. We'll see you in November.
Thanks, folks.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody.